Hello and welcome back to my view from the piano bench. Well, it's right here. It says Kauai keys, but of course that's not what I mean. I mean my view of the landscape from the piano bench. This is the continuation of the stream that was titled Inside the Process, but now it's not a live stream, it's a pre-recorded video. I record this, a day or two before you see it, excuse me. And now on my Joe Holt's Notes YouTube channel. So thanks so much for being here. And thank you to all of you who provide support and encouragement via the link to my website support page. Excuse me, I don't know what just happened. And the various options that are there. So let's tackle the topic at hand today, which is called Evolution of a Collaboration. All right, so making music in itself is a collaboration. And typically, music making is a team sport. It's done with multiple people in a band, in a group. Particularly if you play an instrument that's not a self-accompanying instrument like the piano, or if you don't play guitar. Let's say you play a wind or an orchestral instrument, or you play the drums, or you play the bass, you play the clarinet, you play the flute, you play the trombone, you play the tuba. Those are all pieces of the larger unit or puzzle, I was going to say, of the components that make music, and you take your place in that. And even piano and guitar often take their place with other musicians, right? So music making itself is a collaboration, but I'm talking now about the collaborative process, not just in the moment, but a process that you share often toward a particular goal. Let's say a band, right? A band that is together and has been together for years and years and years. That's a long-term collaboration, and there's a personal component to that. And that is one of the wonderful benefits, one of the wonderful blessings about playing music, is you develop those kind of unique relationships that music allows you to have. And they create their own lane. And you have some very special and unique bonds with people, and multiple lanes are traveling at once, and you get to live that life, which is very cool. One ongoing current collaboration for me that you've heard me talk about, if you've watched my things at all, is the Blossom Dearie tribute project with Sharon Sable, and that is getting to the point now where we're hopefully only a couple of months, 2 or 3, away from releasing the CD, or else very soon thereafter. Had a couple of performances. We'll have more dedicated Blossom Dearie tribute performances, and that's been this ongoing process, and its own lane that it travels in, its own rapport and friendship and everything that develops from that, which is a wonderful thing. So, yeah, let me go ahead and play a tune from that project. The tune associated with Blossom Dearie and her uniqueness. It's the tune Cherry with a Fringe on Top, but Blossom probably did it even a little slower than that. There were some that she did really, really slow, like It Might As Well Be Spring. But a little preview here about the CD that we're going to have, and the recording will be available, of course, on streaming platforms and digitally. Sharon and I decided to take Surrey with the Fringe on Top and not make it a vocal tune, make it an instrumental tune where I tip the hat to Blossom Dearie a little bit and how she does it, and then do my own thing. Interesting little detour about this project. We definitely want to be in that zone, in that space that Blossom Dearie created. You know, if you're doing tribute to somebody, you're not necessarily copying them. And if you're really paying a tribute, you're not copying. I love what Scott Yano said about Sharon in the interview, the review that I quoted a few weeks ago. Sharon is adding to Blossom Dearie's legacy without recreating her voice because she's not trying to imitate. So, but you are trying to be in that zone. Sharon vocally and me playing piano, because Blossom Dearie, although maybe not seen by the public quite as much as a pianist as a singer, to her it was two sides of the same coin, and both are equally important in creating that. So, you know, I'm conscious of not going too far away from that, but I'm allowing myself to do it a little bit or maybe a lot, in this one cut. And I think I have it in the studio at this point. So this is a semi-recreation of what you might hear on the CD. not exactly. Something like that generally. I said recreate, and then I went on to actually completely forget the arrangement I had played, and I was like way far into it. I'm like, oh, I didn't do that. But anyway, that was more or less in the moment. So it comes from the collaboration with Sharon Sable, which you'll be hearing more about. But where this topic really takes me is in the rich history. And that seems kind of funny to say because rich history kind of sounds like, something you'll find in a textbook and something lots of people know about. But this is something, very localized, very niche, very unique to, me and my area, which is, and you've heard me talk about it, the Mainstay Monday series. But really, I don't know anything like it. Although in form, there are absolutely things like it. But what it really was in substance was 100%, 1,000% unique. And it was just an organically grown thing. And at the risk of, being redundant because you've heard me talk about this, oh, look, I forgot this was up here. Speaking of collaborations, right, I was going to mention Beth later. This is a collaborative recording that I did with my good friend Beth McDonald. Beth is a wonderful singer-songwriter, but I'm actually now talking about something I was going to talk about at the end. We met in church, and one of the common bonds, in fact, really where it all started in that first connection was in the traditional church music and a lot of classic hymns and such. It's a recording we did a few years ago, and I was just revisiting that the other day, listening to it yesterday, in fact. That's why I was on the piano and opened the inside, and this, I don't know if you can read this. It says, what does it say? The rhythm of creation is like music we can watch. Now, Beth encouraged me to put my name under here, so the quote's attributed to me. And I'm like, oh, that sounds a little pretentious. Like people will know it's from me because it's in my CD, right? But after I looked at it, I said, I should have put my name in there. But anyhow, that's that. That's completely off the subject, but welcome to my mind. My view from the piano bench is one of these split screens with about 14, windows open at once, like the computer and the tab. And well, what's that saying? Usually attributed to like the personality of women. Like my mind is like 14 windows open at once, and I don't know which tab the music is coming from. Yeah. Where was I? What was I doing? Mainstay Mondays. Because it started out simply as, and this actually will dovetail, I didn't realize this, with my larger point here. It started out with a recognition of something that will become a starting point. The recognition by the, at the time, new director of the Mainstay, not the current one, somebody who was here before, that I would be able to have a variety of people on stage with me. I would be able to perform with them, invite them to the Mainstay, and also pragmatically or practically or whatever, draw, hopefully in his mind, enough of a crowd on a steady Monday night in order to make it work. And all of that apparently happened because what was a 15-week series that we did became an ongoing 4+ year series that was really only stopped, not only, but practically it was stopped by the pandemic and has retooled. But in that series, I learned so much. So much of what's possible, so much of what can only be learned by being in, a certain situation and saying, okay, essentially, now what? And then understanding what to do, doing it, and then doing the next thing from that and growing and growing. And I'm definitely somebody who's going to push. Push myself, push others, push circumstances. So when something's happening, okay, like, notch it out, notch it out. And so I guess my uniqueness in that regard, or that part of me, was a large part of this series. But here's the point, that the collaboration starts with a point of connection. And that's the thing that I learned. And it wasn't that when I was figuring out who to invite as a guest artist or who to accept as a guest artist, because I did like 200 shows. And some guest artists repeated, but there were many, over 100, I'm sure, dozens and dozens of guest artists. And someone asked me once, well, you could understand the songs you were going to do, and that's how you asked somebody. I said, no. I would often approach somebody having no idea what we would do, but the connection was there. And it's a seed. It's those connections, those little touch points are seeds, and they grow into, big trees or whatever they grow into. Right? So what would happen when Mainstay Monday began, and this is going back to the history of it, I was given 15 weeks to put shows together. And how I sought to have variety was to have a different instrumentalist, mostly instrumentalist. I don't know that I had any or few vocalists initially, but I started out with Mike McShane and Paul Madiri, friends of mine, drummer vibes, a little trio, and then I reached out to a regional guitar player. I'm trying to think of who I had, and it's ridiculous. Vince Lardiers, a sax player, different approaches. I think David Sax, a trombonist, came later, but just kept it on variety. Had Nevin Dawson on viola. He was the one local guy, but they were all professional players regionally from my orb, and they were all known commodities to me. Nevin less so, but I brought in these people who were known commodities to me, and in large measure me to them. And that known commodity part, and either someone I had already played with, or someone I knew what they did, and I knew what the point of connection was, and it was people who stylistically pretty much did what I did or had a similar tune base, and it was easy, and we just agreed on tunes, and off we went. Okay, one of those players initially was Danny Tobias. He was in that first year at least. And Danny is a trumpet player that I've known for a very long time because of our mutual association with the Madiri Brothers. And Danny is very well established in the traditional jazz community. And so he's somebody I play with. And the idea of the collaboration, and I guess at that point it was less about the ongoing path, although I did have an ongoing path with Danny, because I would play with him from time to time. But it really wasn't about that focused effort. It was just about the collaboration, making that connection from which we developed that show. I don't think I'm making any sense now. But let me go ahead and play a tune that every time Danny and I play together, we tend to play. And he likes to play it, and I like to play it. And there's a YouTube video of us doing it at the Mainstay. These foolish yous remind me of things. Wait, these foolish things remind me of you. All right, this is off the subject, but the balance between, thinking and feeling and mind and heart and all that, and you hear me talk about that a lot, and that's always something you're trying to manage. You're trying to get your thoughts out of the way, and when you're playing, if I'm having like unrelated thoughts, like distraction kind of thoughts, that's actually good, because that means that this is piloting itself and it's coming from another place. But when I was running somewhere in that tune and running the little line that was sort of a bass line all the way down to here, I recall thinking, it like occurred to me, okay, I'm going pretty far down the keyboard. I wonder if whatever line I'm visioning is going to take me off. And I'm going to wind up doing this, which you'll see me do from time to time, but it's always like shtick. It's like, bonk, and I'll hit the edge. But this time I'm like, I wonder where it's going. And that was just distracting me, but maybe not in necessarily a bad way. Yes. Welcome to my mind. All right. So I think that explanation in the few minutes before I played that tune was probably really convoluted. The centerpiece of that was just in the beginning, Mainstay Mondays were about known commodities, things that I knew worked, and I would bring somebody in, and then we'd sit down an hour before. What tunes you want to play? Off we go, right? The one exception to that, which was actually kind of cool, was Chuck Red, and Chuck Red would be a name that you would understand as being beyond a regional player, although he lives in the DC area. Chuck Red, for the last many years, I don't know if it was quite 2 decades, but it was a long time in the latter part of Charlie Bird's career that Chuck Red was Charlie Bird's drummer, and eventually picked up vibes and played vibes with him as well on occasion. And that, of course, connected him with everybody who's everybody in jazz, and has had his own, very fine career. But Chuck has been connected with the mainstay. Charlie Bird was the first important jazz figure for the mainstay, and connected the mainstay with many, artists, national and international jazz artists who would come. And then when Charlie Bird passed away, Chuck Red picked that up. So Chuck Red has been like a mainstay of the mainstay. And so he was the one musician that I decided to reach out to in those first, however many weeks, 15 weeks, that I didn't know and hadn't played with, and who in other circumstances might not have agreed to play with me, but he didn't know who I was. But it was the mainstay, and it was a new series, and I was reaching out to the guy who was like the most known musician ever to play the mainstay and play there often, right? And he quickly agreed to come. He understood that significance. And that was fun because as I knew him and heard him play, he didn't know me. I knew what to expect. He didn't, but I knew what he was going to find out. Confidently knew, because I hope that I am ultimately, in the practical sense, objective about myself. Ego's a funny thing, right? But I'm very aware of what I can't do, but I'm also, aware of what I can, and hopefully realistically so, at least when I need to be. I knew what would happen with Chuck. I said, okay, Chuck, bring your vibes, but also bring your drums. And I knew what he was thinking. Okay, solo piano player. Okay, actually, he didn't have to bring his drums. His drums were there, but I said, you play drums with a couple of tunes. And then I laughed inside, or smiled anyway, when he said, okay, yeah, I can, bring a snare drum and bring some brushes and play brushes on a tune or two. Basically, that I'm just a piano player, and it's not a full rhythm section. There aren't many piano players who do the hey, I'm a rhythm section all by myself. That's actually very uncommon. That's my that's my thing. Many things are not. That is, uh, and he didn't know that, but I came to find out, and I had maybe known this anyway, that he reveres Dave McKenna, the kind of grandfather or father of that kind of piano playing. That it turns out I can kind of be in that zone. So I like that he came in thinking one thing was going to happen, and then a couple of tunes in, he's like, oh, okay. And then by the end of the tune, end of the night, we were playing tunes where he was just full out on the set, which was fun. Which is just an aside, but still gets with the idea of there's this point of connection. And on that instance, I knew something about it that he didn't, but he found out quick enough. So if you go on YouTube, you'll find the post from that first meeting between Chuck and I. We did a couple of shows after that, and I've had a chance to play, one other gig with him, I think. And he'll actually be at the Mainstay in a few weeks. The Mainstay is opening back up for its 2022 season. And I didn't know commercial was coming, but here it is. And I get to do the first show of 2022 for my initial show of my new First Friday series. First Fridays with Joe Holt at the Mainstay, which is kind of the continuation and the ratcheting up a little bit of the Mainstay Monday concept, but I get to do it once a month, which is perfect because that's what I wanted. And Chuck is going to be leading a band in the show, I think, the third weekend in February. So if I'm not gigging that night, I'll be there, and I'll say hi to Chuck and tell him I talked about him. Probably no, I won't. But anyway, because I haven't played this tune in a long time, I should have thought about it. But this is the tune you'll find posted that Chuck and I did, which is fun. nothing until you hear from me, and you never will, because I'll never get around to it and lose your phone number. No. Oh, Joe. Okay. So, once Mainstay Mondays became an ongoing thing, and all of a sudden it was open-ended, and I had the opportunity to put together a new show every week for really 4 years or so. Yeah, that was a lot. But I had two circumstances that I sought to develop once I realized I could, both as a challenge to myself and as an opportunity for others. One is I began reaching out to regional and beyond professional performers who weren't coming from that same place as me, who couldn't come in even if I didn't know them and have this whole bag of tunes that we all knew, we both knew because we played in the same bag. And I said, okay, do nothing to hear from me. We know that tune, let's go. So I took that away and sought to have performers. Now, of course, I continued to do the kind of, chug-red kind of shows, but I peppered them with shows that, it's like I wanted to climb a mountain, so I put the mountain in front of me because I knew I probably would never climb the mountain if it wasn't right in front of me. Yeah, it was a wonderful thing to help you with practice. If you're playing an instrument, or you could apply this in other disciplines as well, but if you play a musical instrument and you want to make yourself learn a skill set or learn a particular piece that's difficult, put it on your performance calendar. That's what I'm doing with myself right now with a piece. Stephanie Lamott, who's a wonderful classical pianist who lives in the same area as me. I invited her to play in the show in March. We're going to do a 2-piano, classically trained improvising pianist. What in the heck can we both do together kind of thing. And as I've said in the promo, expect the ghost of Victor Borger to be haunting the Mainstay. But there's going to be some absolutely serious music going on as well. And Stephanie played the Greek piano concerto with an orchestra somewhere back in the day. She talked about that, and I was an idiot, and I said, okay, let me see the orchestra reduction. Let's see if I can work it up. You want to do it? And then all of a sudden we're doing that, or at least the first movement. And, that kind of, working things up from that side of the street is the long road for me, because dots on the page don't tell me what to do. They actually confuse me because they stick out their tongue and dance at me and run around and I lose them. But it's a really good push out for me. I would never learn something like that. I would have never learned, the second piano part to Rhapsody in Blue, or if I didn't have to do it, which I made myself do for a Mainstay Monday show a couple of years ago. So, yeah. So I sought to push myself out in areas that I was not comfortable with. And I also began reaching out, or maybe reaching out to regional and beyond performers, but then reaching in to the local community of musicians to offer access to the stage for people who had something to contribute. Musicians who I could find that connection with, and I could help them collaborate in the show, and that would be a new experience for them. And they're wonderful shows that happened with local artists, many of them not professional artists, in that it's not what they primarily do, but they're good musicians, and we made it work, and they were wonderful opportunities to do that. And in the first case, I was pushing myself stylistically and in musical references and such. In the second case, I was pushing or stretching others, but also myself. And I quickly understood, and this is where I'm getting, that what I said before, that connection, whatever it is the starting point. But then that connection uh, can be ultimately just about anything. It can be, it just has to be a place to start. So, two illustrations, and two of the shows where I brought regional and beyond artists in. And one was, the first one I really pushed myself out was with Celine Mobilenicki, who I wound up having a Mainstay Monday show with 3 years in a row. And it would have been 4 years had we not had the pandemic last year. And she was initially based in DC, I think. She's moved around. One of the times I had her, she was in Germany, but she'd come back. But she was a participant in our annual classical music festival, the National Music Festival that we have in Chestertown. And I met her the first summer that I was doing Mainstay Mondays. And if you've followed me for a while, you've heard me tell this story, but it's been a while. She was in town. It was in the month of June to do the National Music Festival. I was still playing that piano bar gig at JR's. That was during the brief amount of time that gig overlapped Mainstay Mondays. Mainstay Mondays had started, and I was still doing that on Wednesdays and many Sundays. And she just happened to come in there to buy to get dinner because she saw pub. I'll have pub food, right? She said to herself, and then was told, hey, there's piano music in the room. There's music down there. And she told me later, so yeah, right, I'm not going to like it. And she came down, and I'm watching her from across the room, and it's like, looked like she was happy and smiling, getting into it, and then she stayed for the whole time. I talked to her later, and we had this wonderful conversation, and really discovering that although our processes of making music were completely different, she was not an improviser at all, and I am, like I say, I can't keep the classical stuff straight, even though that's most of my training. But we understood quickly in our conversation we were coming from the same place, right? And I was really intrigued. So it's like, okay, I'm going to go to one of her performances. I think I actually wound up going to the dress rehearsal. With the National Music Festival, you can go to the main ticketed performance, or you can attend the dress rehearsal during the day, actually for free. No, I went to the performance. I did, because I expected to hear something really special, and I did. Right? And now I wrote this down. It's tricky saying this because with classical music, it's put together. You learn like piece by piece, and you put it together like a jigsaw puzzle. I use that illustration, and some people are good at putting jigsaw puzzles together. Others like to take them apart and rearrange the pieces. So that would be me. And I guess it comes back to that because of what I remember saying to myself as a student of Yehuda Kaplinsky, who Celine knew because Celine went to Juilliard, and the teacher that I had when I was younger wound up at Juilliard and was well known. They were still there. And so that gave us a common bond too. But as a student of Yehuda Kaplinsky, and I'm saying to myself, while we're going through all this like minutiae detail, and I don't think I said it out loud, but I said it was loud in my head. It says, I just want to see the target so I can aim my bow and arrow at it. Basically what I was saying is, show me the picture so that way I can do that, as opposed to, okay, this shade, this little thing, this thing, put it together. And that's what the classical thing is. And every once in a while, I'll come across a really special musician, classical musician. I mean, they're all great, if you can pull that off, but who presents that jigsaw puzzle, but you see it without any of the lines or any of the divisions. Because when you put a jigsaw puzzle together, you still see the lines, right? Because they appropriated in here. It's like first time I heard Long Long play on the radio, I didn't know who it was, but I just knew that he was expressing the music as if it were coming from him, as if it was being played through him, as if it were the Keith Jarrett kind of thing that I referenced before, as if he were improvising it. And, when it comes from here, not from here, is when it really moves me, right? And I was absolutely moved by that. And Celine and I got to, let me back up. So I heard her perform. I thought about it for a month or so, and I emailed her and I said, "Okay, Celine, I have this series," and she knew about it because we talked about it. I says, I don't know what we would do, but I know we have this common place to start from as to how we feel the music. Let's figure something out. You game? You want to do a show? And she said yes. And the first year we did it, we relied a little more than was probably the best for me on me accompanying her from some straight reading stuff in addition to other stuff. And then we learned from that and figured it out and moved in other directions a little bit and just evolved. And it was this pick it up, learn from this, pick it up. It was his own little path. Now, Celine and I have never collaborated on anything other than those 3 Wednesday, Monday shows, but it's still its own path. And if Celine and I do it again, we're going to pick up where we left off. And it started from a point of nothing in common except playing from, expressing from the heart. And if that makes sense. So the tune I wrote down to play is one of the tunes that I played that night when she was at the piano bar. And I remember because she pointed out to me, and now I know why she was smiling, because I played Smoke It's in Your Eyes, and I sang that in my senior recital at Juilliard, she said. So she was happy to hear that tune. Another, which came later, push out, and I just kept pushing things out. But a really notable one, and this was even more like, whoa, because this was now cross-discipline, and it was great, was with Lee McGowan, my friend who's a professional ballerina dancer up in New York, who these days freelancers also in acting and such. And I had the opportunity to perform liturgical dance with her, me accompanying her, because she happens to be the daughter of the chaplain at Heron Point, where I play the Vesper services most every Sunday. And she had come down, this is some years ago, and I met her for the first time. And I think it was on Easter. It might have been Christmas, but I think it was Easter. And as a gift to her mother, she performed liturgical dance in the service. And so I met her. This was, we had like discussion for like half an hour before the service. Okay, what are we doing? And I proposed that we just improvise it. And she was comfortable doing that. And we picked a tune, and we tried it a little bit with no one in the room. And instead of listening, see, this is all new to me. So instead of listening to respond to a musician, I'm watching to respond to Lee. And of course, she's listening to respond to me, but she doesn't know what she's going to hear, right? So she is responding to what the feeling of it. Again, it's coming from here. She's thinking things through, but it's like, if it feels, what I'm stuck for words. I want to say more than just, if it's faster, she gets faster. If it's slower, she gets slower. Those are kind of feelings too. But she responded, and I responded to her. It's like, this works. Let's just run with it. And everything we did in the service was like that. It's like, whoa. And so she came down again. Some months later, we did it again. And, we knew we were comfortable, so we pushed it out a little more. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. There's the connection. There's the starting point. There's the place in common. Had nothing to do with how we were going to put together a performance show on a stage. It had nothing to do with church or liturgical dance. I said, Lee, I know that we connect this way. I know we can improvise. You want to put a show together? Sure. And had no idea what the content would be, and we figured it out. We actually did 2 shows. And the second time she was down, we were able to connect through the local arts council and my friend John Schrottweiser, grateful to him, to do a whole block of school assemblies for the kids. And that was great because I got to work with Lee in like a big high school like gym, and she's going all over the place, as opposed to the little mainstay stage where she made that work, and so that rapport has continued, right? And that becomes its own lane, its own thing, and the collaboration just continues. And I have Lee coming down in October to do a show at the Garfield Center for the Arts in Chestertown, which is a larger performance space with a larger stage, with my friend Paula Johns, a vocalist from Philadelphia, who has a Dionne Warwick tribute show, and she's going to do that. Paula's going to sing that show, and Lee's going to do interpretive dance. Right? And who would have thought of that? Except just through like starting with, here's this connection, here's what can happen, here's what, and it's all these things I learned through the blessing of having Mainstay Mondays. So I'm going to play a tune from the church side. It's a kind of a pseudo-contemporary tune, As the Deer Longs for Streams of Water. And I know Lee likes this tune. A lot of things she dances to, it has a 3 feel, But this is a two feel, but I'm going to play it as if, Lee is dancing in my mind. Usually you try not to portray in your facial expressions or whatever that like, oh yeah, that was a train wreck. But I almost actually said something. It's like, oh, would have helped if I would have reminded myself of the tune before I tried to play it, because I hadn't looked at that tune in a while and I didn't know what I was doing. But I decided not to say that out loud, but I might as well have. So, anyhow, the point of this is it starts with a connection, and then all kind of things can grow. And moving now away from Mainstay Mondays and just over the course of my broader path and career and life doing this, those connections have developed and nurtured wonderful friendships that are fueled by the continued collaboration. Because you wind up like spending dedicated time with people you're collaborating with, and sharing space and rapport and genuine friendship that's afforded by that just really doesn't happen anywhere else, and it's a wonderful blessing. The Madiri Brothers, example one. I met them when I was 14 years old and they were 16 years old in high school. And we had this sort of common connection, drawn to that early classic jazz, and we taught each other a whole lot of stuff, and we're still connected. And in fact, we're sort of like reconnecting in maybe 3 years. What's it going to be? Yeah. 2 years. my goodness, 2.5 years, it will be 50 years since we met. And we're actually thinking of putting together like a 50th anniversary little thing, a little tour or something, you know. But that's all connected with music. I mentioned my friend Beth McDonald. Met her going on 20 years ago in church when I was worship arts director at Chestertown Church of the Nazarene. And it started with that common connection and has really blossomed into an important friendship for me and important collaborations for both of us. She's just released a new recording as a singer-songwriter, and I'm her accompanist on that, which I'm delighted, and it's called Paint Me Blue. And there's some really poignant songs on there, and hopefully Beth will be able. It's really difficult as a singer-songwriter to get your music out there, especially when you don't have like a defined genre, because Beth is kind of stylistically all over the place, but not all over the place, I mean diverse, but grounded in a lot of the sensibilities of the classic jazz, although she's not really a jazz singer. So it makes it hard for her to pigeonhole herself, which people make you do. But yeah, check that out. Check out Beth, and I'll be talking more about her, I'm sure. And then to end where I started, I referenced Sharon Sable, the Blossom Dearie tribute. And what was that connection? It was one tune she sat in some years ago at the True Blue Jazz Festival when we were doing the Saturday afternoon bandstand show for 3 hours, and Sharon was in the audience, and Peggy Rayleigh, who's a friend of hers, who's co-director of the festival, said, "Sharon, come up and sing a tune." And yes, do I have to? Okay. She came up, and I was, of course, in the band, and Sharon sang "Taking a Chance on Love," and that little connection, ding in my head. It's like, invite Sharon to do a Mainstay Monday. Okay. She came down with her husband, Sean Kesani, and I played with Sean before, and we did one Blossom Theory tune that I didn't even know was a Blossom Theory tune. It was T for 2. It was a normal tune for me, but we did it in the Blossom Theory arrangement, and I found out later that made such an impression on Sharon that she decided that I would be the one she would reach out to for something she had wanted to do for a long time, which was a Blossom Theory tribute project, right? That little connection. And now that thing is, ready to happen, but we're also doing other gigs, and, it's just, that's become its own path. All these paths, and particularly like in my own, like, personal, professional life as they intersect, those three paths, the Madiri Brothers and Beth and Sharon, they continue. And there are others. So it's just, these collaborations grow from a little starting point of what's that little connection. So I'll just play a little bit. If I should have went over this tune too, Taking a Chance on Love. So this is, I don't know which is more of a mess, my talking or my playing in this, but hopefully we've survived. Let me see, what key? Let's try it. Now Sharon's key. She's not singing. Shut up, Sharon. Okay, stop while I'm whatever I am. All right, so there's a little window into my experience. Thank you for those of you who actually find this engaging and come back for more. So thank you so much. And I'll see you tomorrow night for for Piano for My Friends. And that's when I just play and I allow myself to be spontaneous and hopefully get in the zone and stay there. And I am changing some things up on my web presence. One of them is that I'm stopping posting my schedule on the blog that I've been posting on since 2005. My schedule exists on a separate Blogspot blog and is linked to my website so I can manage it separately. And that's going to stay there as an archive of past performances. But if you go to my website and click on the shows tab, I'm starting to put them out there. So you'll find them there, including the first show at the Mainstay that's happening next week. Is it? Really? Yeah, Friday night of next week. And we'll go from there. So thanks so much. Hope to see you soon.